Hi there, I'm Anna Prosser, and I am back with Nicholas, who is the military expert for Wargaming.net. Nicholas, can you tell us a little bit about your job, what you do with Wargaming?
Well, I have two functions, a public side and a private side. The public side, the players will know me as the Cheiftain. I do a couple of things. One of which is I am the military expert that people can come ask me questions about the real tanks. I am a tanker by trade, 13 years in the Army. And I also run the military history column, the Chieftain's Hat. So roughly every week or so there is an article which is put up. Usually I try to go for something a little bit less well known to expand the knowledge of, because everybody knows roughly, if they're playing the game already, they already know roughly what a Tiger tank is. So this week's article, for example, was about the developmental prototype of the Tiger tank and why it actually looks like the way it does. So when you go into the game, because the thing is so historically based, you load it up and you get what doesn't look like a Tiger tank. As far as everybody knows, the tank that you get in the garage is not a Tiger tank, but actually what it was a developmental prototype that eventually evolved by accident into the Tiger we all know and love. But it causes some confusion, so I put the article up and say, okay, look, this is exactly the historical basis behind this tank that you see in the garage and that you play with when you get to Tier 6 on the German line.
That's so cool.
Sorry, Tier 7.
That's so cool. You know, when I first started playing the game, one of the things I did was just sit there and kind of read all the information about the tanks, and some of the guys were making fun of me, like, what are you doing? You're not playing the game, you're just reading about all the tanks. But it's so cool to me that it's so historically accurate, that there's so much thought put into the actual military strategy that would go into these items. So, I mean, I can't even think of any other games that are like this. Would you say this is one of the games that really does that best?
Yes and no. The actual gameplay is not historically accurate, because ultimately if it is a purely accurate simulation, it'll be very boring and nobody will want to play it. There are games out there like that. I recommend them if you know them, but the thing about World of Tanks is that it is fun, fast action, and you can just sit down and have a good time without thinking too much. The tanks, yes, they're historically based, but oh, where was it going? Brain fart. One of the things you want to do, though, is you want to make sure that the balancing is not killed by the historical accuracy. So, for example, when you're aiming your tank, yes, you got to do a little bit of windage to make sure that if you're leading a moving target, you get the lead correct. But the tank doesn't care about the cant, it doesn't care about the super elevation. You just point your cursor in the right direction, pull the trigger, and away you go. So, to that extent, historical accuracy is kind of left a little bit by the wayside. But the tanks themselves, the 3D models, are as accurate as we can make them. The hard statistics that we can get to, as long as they don't kill the game balance, they're as good as we can make them. So if you're in an M4 Sherman tank, a medium tank from 1942, the American standard tank, and you go up against a Panther tank from the front, in real life and in the game, you will probably lose. You have to use strategy and tactics, and this is something that does transfer well from the real army, is that if you use military tactics that are taught at Fort Benning now, or wherever your armour school is, Puckapunyal in Australia, they do work in World of Tanks, and you can use the abilities of your tanks. For example, the American tanks are famous for gun depression. That's basically how low the gun will lower if you're shooting over a hill. More gun depression means you can hide more of your tank as you're shooting. American tanks are very, very good at this. The Russian tanks, not so much, because Russian tanks were designed more on an offensive mindset. A smaller turret means that the breech of the gun has less room to go up, which means the front of the gun can't go down. So Russian tanks are not good for defensive positions, they're not good in hilly terrain. American tanks, mobile, good gun depression, you can use those as delaying tanks, delaying actions. You fire a couple of shots, withdraw. Tanks go as the water flows, so you never crest over the top of a hill when you want to go somewhere. These basic tanker tactics will work in the game, and they will see you through. Even though the game mechanics aren't realistic specifically, the tactics and the fun you can have will work. So real tankers, we have a lot of veterans who play this game. Real tankers have a very good success rate in playing, especially if they're platooned up with friends of theirs, because a platoon is more than the sum of its parts. If you have 3 people that know what they're doing and they're working together, it's far more effective than 3 people individually, even if those individuals are very good. Coordination, teamwork, all part of historical usage. A platoon is a platoon. It will defeat enemy single tanks every time if they're played well.
Yeah, I come from a background in esports, so professional video gaming competitions, And a lot of times there'll be team games that are based a lot on one person's performance. You know, if you have a ringer on your team, that's probably going to get you through. But I've heard a lot of people saying in World of Tanks that it's really more about how well your team works together than the skill of any one player. Would you say that's true?
Absolutely. It is a team game. You start the battle, there are 15 people per side, and all 15 of them have to average out to pull the weight. One guy, even if you're the best tanker on the battlefield, you're still only 1 out of 15 of your team. You just do not have the weight and the firepower to make a difference, even if you're the top tier tank. Lots of medium skilled players will beat a well-skilled individual player, and that's just the way of it. You have to look at the battlefield, you look at the little mini-map, see what your team is doing. You have to coordinate as best as you can, and in Clan Wars they're great at this. The teams that we have playing today, the Simp and the other demonstration teams, you know that they all have their headsets on, they're all chatting away to each other on TeamSpeak, and they're all coordinating. Absolutely, they probably have some better players than other players in their team, but it's the coordination that makes it so much more important. That's something that the military teaches from day one, is you are not an individual. You're a member of a squad, a platoon, a company. You cannot win as an individual.
So as someone who has a background in military and with tanks, did you ever imagine that you would have this kind of job, and how does it feel to go from that background to here?
I'm having a great time. I'm still adjusting to the whole computer game industry. I'm looking around at this is my first E3. I've never had any reason to go to it. Over the weekend, I'm still in the National Guard, so over the weekend I was down in Nevada. That's where our training area is, and believe me, this is far more comfortable and far more entertaining than sitting in the desert getting sunburned. But on the other hand, I have to say I'm really very much enjoying this job. It's great, especially when I have my column. I can teach history. That's where they actually found me, was at a tank museum, and I was teaching history at a tank museum. So they brought me in, I do my hatch columns, and I very much enjoy working with the players who want to learn about the tanks. And that's the other great thing about it. You're not just playing yourself, like some first-person shooters. You're running around, it's just you and your rifle. Your tank in World of Tanks, and presumably your airplane as well in World of Warplanes, becomes almost a character that you develop yourself. It sounds a little bit counterintuitive, but there's a reason that in real life we give our tanks names. My last tank was Diplomatic Incident, and she was a great little tank. Note I used the term she. Every tank will have a name. It is a character you get to know and love your tank. And there was one time I came back after the Iraq tour. About a year later, I'm in a motor pool up in Fort Lewis, Washington, and I see my tank. And they've sprayed the name out, but if you're on a tank every day for a year, you will recognize that tank in a motor pool because of the ding in the side skirt or whatever. I said, it's barely legal. I gave it a nice big hug. And the crew were on the tank looking down. Sir, can I help you? Oh, sorry, just getting reacquainted. I'm not going to say you're going to go quite to that level in World of Tanks, but you do, because each tank has its own character, you do get to be a little bit more interested in it to find out what makes it work, why the tank was designed the way it was designed, and how well did it perform in real life. So I enjoy helping people out with that aspect of it as well.
It's kind of cool because some of the tanks were tanks that were never actually produced. They were prototypes or ideas and things. Is that kind of thrilling to be able to use tanks that you never would have been able to use in real life?
The best thing about it for me as a historian's perspective is the 3D modeling, because you get to see what the tank would have looked like. Now, there's a difference between that and how the tank performs, because if the tank really performed very well, they would have made it in real life. And there's a reason that it never got off the drawing board, because it didn't work. But here in the game, we give the tanks the benefit of the doubt. When the Panther tank came out, it had a terrible reputation for unreliability. 2/3 of them wouldn't even get to the battlefield. But what fun is that in the game? So your tank is reliable in the game. A lot of the quirks, suspension failures, overheating in Covenanter, for example, they are ignored in the game for the purposes of you just have a good bit of fun. I got a 2-pounder on this tank. Let's see what it does against this Mark IV, and the answer probably won't be very much. But it's fun trying and giving it a go.
Definitely. Well, for people who may not have played this game yet, what kind of person would like this game? What are the interesting things that we can tell our stream viewers that they might want to check out?
Our demographic is actually surprisingly different from what you might expect for the average online game. I did a straw poll on my column, just how many of you are veterans, how many of you are older age, and the average person seems to be in his mid-30s, often veterans. About a third of the people that read my column are veterans. And when we go around the country and we have player gatherings, and we do this we think the players are always underappreciated by gaming companies, so we always try as much as possible to meet players whenever we go anywhere. And we get the gatherings come out, and you look at the player base, and you have father and son. Like, dad is 38 and the son is 10 or whatever it is, and they will play together. There is the occasional husband and wife team, not so many, but there is something about the demographic of the player and also the game itself, because you don't have to have the reflexes of a 16-year-old to win. No matter how quickly you can move the mouse, the turret is only going to turn so quickly. So you have enough time to think, you have enough time to be tactical, and that's where us old fogies actually have a chance of getting our own back on the young ones.
And the newbies like me.
Well, everybody was once, and what you want to do is you want to find, we have a nice newcomer forum in the on the website, and we have training rooms as well, so if you find somebody, particularly in the clan, if you join a clan, they will conduct training events for you to help you get better. There's no end of places you can go to find hints and tips on how to survive. Basically, the first problem that people have when they load up the game is they'll drive into the middle of the battlefield, and they will get blown up in a glorious and spectacular manner. This is I would say discouraging for a new player. They have no idea what happened. They don't understand that spotting mechanics are at work. It's not like some FPSs that if you have line of sight, you automatically see them. Here, things can be hidden. You can be killed by that which you cannot see in this game. So tactical movement becomes important. Concealment, cover. Once you figure that out, those mechanics, then you can go into more advanced tactics, and the mentorship that you can get from other players is very important in this, and it will just overall enjoy your gaming experience. And as you become trained, you become better. You'll enjoy the game more on your own as you go into the random battles.
Many of the players I've talked to have emphasized the community aspect of the game, and obviously being someone who, your job is to kind of train the community, teach them, impart knowledge. Would you say that the community is a large part of what makes this game so fun?
Well, it has to be, because there's no single player mode in this. When you click battle, and you've got, there's a little number at the top left corner that says how many tens of thousands of people are online at this moment in time. You are online with 29 other people sitting in front of the computer around the world somewhere. There is no choice but to partake in the community simply by playing the game. And there are people that go on the forum, people that don't go on the forum. There are people that talk about the game on other forums but don't go near ours for whatever reason, I don't know. But without a community, there is no game. And this is a fundamental principle that has driven Wargaming.net pretty much since day one. It's that the players are everything.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. I certainly feel educated about this community, and I'm getting really excited about it. Thanks so much for sharing, and be sure, if you haven't checked out this game, to go download it at wargaming.net, and I'm sure they can find you on the forums as well.
You'll find me on the forum. I go by the handle of the Cheiftain. Easy to find. I have my own column, very easy to find, and I'll look forward to teaching yourself a little bit more later as well.
Thank you very much.